Hello, everybody, and welcome to our broadcast. Thank you for joining us today. I know that we got started just a little bit late. As you know, sometimes things can run a little long when you're dealing with the government or whatever it may be. So we are glad to have you and glad to have all of our senators here as well. I am Derrell Hartwick, the president and CEO of the Coeur d'Alene Regional Chamber. Today, we have a great partnership that we have with the Boise Metro Chamber. They normally do their legislative update. And then our Coeur d'Alene Regional Chamber got the opportunity to join them and have a representative from our area as well join this call. We will have Senator Rabe and Senator Riggs to represent two of the fastest growing parts of our great state. They are both first-time lawmakers and two of the youngest members of our Senate right now. We will talk with them about their experiences so far, what they hope to accomplish, and how they're going to engage more young people into Idaho politics. Again, we want to thank the Boise Metro Chamber and the Coeur d'Alene Chamber as well for this partnership. We also would like to thank our sponsor, Blue Cross of Idaho, the Murray Group, and Northwest Specialty Hospital. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host, Matt Eperlding with the Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce.
Derrell, it's exciting to be here with you. What I'm excited about is the fact that we've got two different parts of the state that are so geographically spread apart and yet are suffering from some of the exact same challenges, growth issues, property tax issues. I'm excited to hear from the legislators. But what I'm also excited about is through this partnership, we've been able to expand our reach. And in doing that, we've got the Idaho Statesman, the Idaho Press, Idaho Ed News, and the Coeur d'Alene Press covering this. What that does is it allows us to have this conversation on more platforms so more people can see it and really expand this idea that there's reason to have civil dialogue between the two parties and between the two disparate, different regions about some of the same issues that we're being challenged by. So I'm really excited today. You know, Blue Cross of Idaho has been a consistent partner in the Boise Metro Chamber's presentations, and I'm really excited that they decided to partner on this one. So before we get started, Derrell, I'd like to just play this really quick video from our sponsor, Blue Cross of Idaho.
What does it mean to be on someone's side? It means being there when called, but it also means not getting in the way, stepping in without overstepping. Just imagine if health insurance can be a little more like that. On the front lines, making things easier, and on the sidelines everywhere else. Knowing what matters and doing what works. That's the side we're all on.
You know, Derrell, partnerships are really important. I want to thank you for taking a risk with us on this, and I'll give you the honors of introducing our two legislators.
Thanks, Matt. I don't know if it's so much of a risk. We've been very excited to get this partnership going. Sometimes the north of Idaho and south part of Idaho, there's a little bit of a gap sometimes people talk about. So it's really neat to be able to do this, bring our communities together. That's what I think is so great about Chambers of Commerce, especially in this day and time, is it is so hard and difficult to connect and network. And when your business leaders of each community can get together and do this and coordinate two chambers and two senators to get on the same call at the same time, I mean, it just takes magic and miracles, and that's what we've done today. So today we do have Senator Riggs from up here in Kootenai, and there is Senator Riggs right there. And also we have Senator Rabe, freshman senator down there in the Boise area. So thank you both all for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, before we get started, really quick check-in. Just kind of a quick overview. It's your first term, your first time down there as a legislator. How are you weathering the first month and a half of the session? Let's start with you, Senator Rabe.
It is an interesting time to be here for the first time. I've heard that usually the first 2 weeks you're having nice lunches and going to events after work to get to know each other. We're not really having those privileges right now. So, and things kind of started off tense from the beginning. So it's been an interesting time for me.
Senator Riggs.
Well, you know, people keep asking, you know, hey, how are you doing? How are you adapting to everything? And I keep saying, well, they haven't kicked me out of the building yet, so I guess things are going okay. But you know, as Senator Rabe said, a lot of folks are talking about how different things are right now because of COVID restrictions on meetings, and there's less folks wandering around. But for us, this is our normal. We don't have that experience of years before. So for us, I think we're making our way pretty well and doing what we can.
Yeah, I remember my first year, it didn't matter that all of the hubbub was going on. I didn't have time to breathe. So it might actually be a welcome respite. Our first question is for you, Senator Riggs. I mean, you're an accomplished businessman before you got to the legislature. And as a first-year legislator who happens to also be the vice chair of Senate Health and Welfare, maybe you could speak about how you got that position. But what do you hope to accomplish during your tenure? And do you have any legislative proposals for 2021 that you're bringing forward on behalf of your constituents?
Right now, what I'm working on, especially as it relates to health and welfare, which was just, being named as a freshman of vice chair of health and welfare was a great honor, even though I knew it was going to be a large responsibility, but it was something I was glad to take on. And I think as far as those personal issues, personal bills, right now, it's the same stuff that a lot of the folks throughout Idaho are concerned with. And there are things about health and welfare due to what's going on, what we've experienced over 2020 with COVID-19. And so that's actually a lot of what I'm working on right now is, looking at old statutes that were written without understanding of the context of what we might go through with a global pandemic like this. And so I've been spending a lot of time kind of reworking some language, redefining some things, making it clear to better define things like isolation and quarantine, and really lay out the responsibilities of different state agencies, not with an intent towards trying to limit anyone from doing certain things, emergency powers, things like that. But it's to clarify so that we can all work together. It's kind of doing what I can to help make things a little bit better based on the experiences that we've had over the last 12 months. And so that's what's taken up most of my days right now. And I think it's what's going to continue to be an important focus throughout the rest of the session.
Thank you.
So the next question I have is for Senator Rabe. Obviously, up here in North Idaho and down there in Boise is a bit different. So very nice to finally meet you and get to see you and everything like that. But you as well were very accomplished. You're an attorney. You had a great career, very much like Senator Riggs, and decided to go into politics. You're a very large advocate in your first year in the legislature. So I think the same question for you. What do you hope to accomplish in your first years, and then what are some proposed legislation you see for 2021?
And so the reason I decided to do this because I wanted our community and our state to address growth. I'm originally from Idaho, grew up here. I saw how small our little city of Boise used to be when I was a little kid, and how much it has changed in that short period of time. I've also worked in homelessness and housing policy at parts of my career in the Bay Area, and got really concerned that Boise would turn into a city like that with so many people living outside if we didn't address this and get ahead of the problem. So I was really excited to try to address growth, particularly our housing crisis at the state level. With the pandemic, some of our priorities here in the legislature have certainly changed, and I've also been talking to others about how we can ensure that we get out vaccines in time and we can address the emergency that we're in. But I do have some proposed legislation to address growth. One is I've been working with some senators to try to expand the circuit breaker to more low-income families, as well as other property tax legislation to relieve the burden on residential homeowners. And also trying to address the problem of rental fees, which has been a big problem over the last year, especially when many renters had to pay their rent late and incurred hundreds or even thousands of dollars in fees. And so proposing legislation, actually presenting it in the committee this afternoon.
Let's build on that, Senator Rabe, because the Treasure Valley and the CDA region are experiencing incredible increases in home values. Homes are being purchased cash, offers unseen, no inspection, at $100,000 above asking prices in some areas. And this is causing a really deep challenge in terms of supply and therefore increasing rent prices, new home purchases to the point that many locals are getting pushed out of the market. What, if anything, can the legislature do to support communities with housing struggles, both rental homes, both for renters and for home buying markets?
It's a great question. I would love to just put a large sign on all of our borders saying, we're full, but we can't do that. We can't stop growth. It's going to keep happening. This is a wonderful place to be and live, and people are going to want to keep coming here. And I want to make sure that our government, I think our focus should be to make sure that growth pays for and takes care of itself, and that it's not paid for on the backs of residents. So big picture, Matt, you touched on, we need more supply. We need more supply of housing to keep up with demand. One really easy way the state legislature could do this is by investing in our housing trust fund, which has been around for 20 years. And it would allow the state to invest in building affordable housing for folks who may not be able to afford housing on market. This fund is sat unfunded for 20 years now, so it would be really a simple solution. It's there, it's available to us to put money into. As far as the rental market goes, we can make sure that it works for everyone, that can't be exploited, and that people have access to it. And we can try to provide resources and services to people to avoid eviction and homelessness. We've done that with a big investment that JFAC just passed in rental assistance, $175 million. For homeowners, property tax relief is really key, and I can talk more about that. There's a lot to that, but expanding the circuit breaker, raising the homeowners exemption, and indexing to make sure residents aren't paying so much of the burden. And also wages is another thing. People can't afford to live here anymore because wages have completely stagnated and flatlined in a lot of ways while housing is going up. So more and more people are living paycheck to paycheck. So we need to address the fair wage issue also.
You're up, Derrell.
Okay. Senator Riggs also. But that was a good point. And the segue, I guess, is the property tax bill. I know that's been a big discussion. Obviously, up here, it's a very large one. So this is a question for you both. So, Senator Riggs, if you want to go first, but the property tax bill that was in the Senate carried by Senator Rice was based on the statement of purpose that the bill would change the cap on property tax budgets to prevent excessive increases on citizens during this time of rapid growth, which is happening tremendously up here and in the Boise area. So what were your thoughts on how this could or could not help our communities when the future of our growth is happening?
Yeah, that's been a constant conversation that's having to be had with a lot of different communities. And in fact, I just had the city administrator from Rathdrum in my office yesterday talking about some of the difficulties that different communities in our state are facing, because as Kootenai County as a whole is growing very rapidly and has been for some time, Rathdrum as a standalone city is seeing significant growth, but it hasn't been happening for as many years as some other places. And so they're not necessarily prepared with financial stores that some other communities have to offset some of the restrictions that some of the property tax proposals that are being talked about put in place. And the same goes for other communities. As much as Kootenai County, Ada County, Canyon County are growing rapidly, there are counties around the state of Idaho that are actually shrinking. And so that's one of the difficulties. And I think that's what you see in a lot of the proposed legislation, and the reason why so much of it is constantly evolving is based on the idea that to make sure that we do something that doesn't benefit one community and hinder another community it's a complicated set of mathematics. And so that's why I think there's so much work going into it. And I think that with continued community input, we're finding our ways into finding solutions that will benefit communities as well as protect longtime homeowners in the state of Idaho, and really make sure that we capitalize on the growth that's coming in, but not to the detriment of everyone and everything that's made this state so great and made the people want to move here in the first place. And so I'm optimistic that through continued effort, we can figure out a tax tax adjustments that are going to protect our people and provide the cities what they need to continue to grow and be healthy.
I definitely agree with that. I hope we can find something that works for everyone. My understanding of this bill, I am on the local government and taxation committee, so I've been really digging into it with the cities and the counties. And they're very concerned that the current piece of legislation on property tax as written would cut essential local services, and would also potentially not restore the balance that we need between the burden between residents and commercial properties. So local governments are already feeling really stretched thin. It would limit their budget growth to the consumer price index and cap their budgets at 4%, require elections if they needed to spend beyond that. Even if growth far exceeds that amount to pay for roads, to pay for first responders, to pay for just essential services in that area. So I think that may restrict our economy, local economy, and already scarce housing stock in some ways. And at the same time, doesn't resolve that fairness issue that we need to address.
Thank you both. So obviously we could not go without talking about the COVID and the restrictions and what stage we're currently in. So I do have to go ahead and ask, as we move into stage 3, countywide, district-wide health orders, mask mandates could not take effect until this ratified biosolution passed by our local community commissioners. Under a new legislation introduced by Senator Vick this week, proposed Senate Bill 1060, which would include emergency clause, making it effective immediately upon passage. It would also make violators of those who infractions subject to a maximum fee of $50 rather than misdemeanors as the law currently states. How do you see this affecting our area moving forward, Senator Riggs?
Well, I think it's going to have a positive impact because basically the way it comes down is the health departments aren't being restricted in any of their standard day-to-day things that they do or the oversight that they have on things like restaurants and whatnot. But if there is a county-wide or district-wide mandate that gets put in place, it would require participation directly by the Board of County Commissioners. And the way that helps is there's been a lot of concern and discussion over the last year about boards of health becoming overly politicized. And that is because they had the ability and the control to put things in like mask mandates. And so we've seen in some situations people talking about removing people with medical backgrounds and good medical training from these health boards so that we can put more politically, ideologically bound folks on those boards to make the decisions that a lot of the people want them to make. And I think that is that could be incredibly detrimental for health boards across the state. And so by taking anything that the health boards do that is a county-wide mandate and requiring the county commissioners to weigh in on it because it affects every person within the county, that takes a lot of that political pressure off of the boards and lets them makes them make medically based decisions. They can have the debates because even oftentimes medical experts don't agree on the best approach. So let them hash it out on the board and then pass that county-wide recommendation onto the county commissioners who are elected, they're accountable, and they better understand the ramifications of large-scale county-wide choices like that. And so I think it helps to make it clear who's accountable for the decisions that get made, and it also protects the health boards from turning into overly politicized bodies.
Senator Rabe, building off of that, I am kind of wondering, viruses are a lot like invasive species. They really don't abide by man-made boundaries. So if you bring a boat into the state of Idaho, you have to have it inspected at our borders because we're concerned about quagga mussels. As the COVID-19 epidemic and pandemic has raged, there's been a lot of pressure to kind of change rules that have existed to control for infectious diseases. What's your take on that? Do you think there's some flexibility in terms of finding some compromise to make sure that the health districts can still stop something like viral meningitis outbreak in a high school while still providing a little bit more oversight to the health districts?
Yeah. What I always say, the other line of work is don't create something new and don't shift course during an emergency. Try to address what's in front of you and triage and prioritize. And I think right now we are still in an emergency. And so I definitely agree with Senator Riggs that in the future there could be some sort of more uniformity and definitely also some assurances that people on the public health boards have a health background and are experts in advising based on their area of expertise. But I do think right now it is maybe not the time. I think it would be better to wait until we have a little bit more information from after we get through this vaccination phase and get everyone through this and allow the health boards to encourage folks to wear masks, which is a simple and non-invasive way we can all protect each other and get out those vaccines to folks who are very much wanting and needing them right now.
That's great. That's great to hear. Let's talk about something that maybe a little bit more fun, maybe a little bit more of our wheelhouses, our financial budget. For the fiscal year, Idaho was 3.9% ahead of budget, which is amazing, leading our great country, which is what Idaho does best. And that is compared to the forecasts that have been adjusted upward, due to the pandemic. So what do you attribute this to, and then how will this help our 2021 budget? Senator Riggs, this is for you.
Well, I think everybody was pleasantly surprised to see that the concerns of a downturn in our economy were not only not what we feared, but we ended up in much better position than we thought we were going to be, because that allows us the flexibility to do what we need to do to continue to help and drive the economy going forward. I think, you hear anecdotally stories about people coming in from different states that have much more restrictive lockdowns, mandates, and things like that, and spending some of those tourism dollars, if you will, on things that they can't do in and around their states. And so I think that was part of what did it. I think that just people trying to continue to get along with their lives helped as well. And I'm just glad that going forward, we now have the ability to restore some of the holdbacks that the governor recommended for state agencies, and it allows us comfort in knowing that even though we're not out of the pandemic yet, we have a lot of strength in our own state economy that's going to allow us to drive on and be more financially sound and get life back to normal faster than we might have otherwise, because there's been so much suffering and inconvenience from this pandemic through kids not being able to go to school, businesses having to close down, limit their hours, make all sorts of adjustments like that. So knowing that our economy is still staying strong and robust, I think it gives the people of Idaho a lot of confidence to weather the other parts that are more unpredictable, like when the vaccines will get out, how long this will continue to last. And so I think that it gives us all a bit of strength in this time of uncertainty. And so I think that's a good thing. And we look forward to kind of pushing that along as much as we can.
Speaking of budgetary stuff, in terms of Medicaid, when the Idaho constituency, so the entire state, voted at 60+% to move forward with Medicaid expansion, for many people, this came at the right time, particularly due to the pandemic. But the problem is that some of the Milliman estimates were inaccurate at best, but gravely below the mark in terms of the expenses that Medicaid is currently facing. This is a question for both of you. I'm going to start with you, Senator Rabe. This is a big issue, particularly in the Treasure Valley districts. It was something that was heavily supported down here. How are we going to fund this? And is there any light at the end of the tunnel for maybe some ways to help control costs?
I think so. And my answer around this is going to be kind of similar to the above. I think we do need to be patient in terms of figuring out how to control cost here. I think as our state agencies are telling us, we don't really know what the cost or the cost savings are of Medicaid yet. This year, a lot of people signed up, one because they were unemployed due to COVID-19. We had we had higher unenrollments, and also there was kind of pent up demand after many Idahoans went so many years without access to care and insurance. So this year, I think, is a special year. And once Idahoans start receiving preventive care through Medicaid expansion, we can maybe expect the cost to be more manageable. This year is also unique, and the next 2 years will be as the federal government is going to be boosting our state's Medicaid funds by over $100 million a year. That additional federal funding, which has been promised to be provided through 2022, should be enough to make up for some of those additional costs.
You know, and Senator Riggs, this is going to fall into your court, particularly because of that vice chairmanship. What's your take on how we're going to continue to manage Medicaid? Obviously, it was an important and needed service, but our budget numbers weren't quite right.
Yeah, rapid ongoing analysis and adjustment is what's going to be necessary to continue to look at the effect of Medicaid and what's going on. To say that the Milliman reports have been inaccurate is, I think, drastically understating the issue. And that's part of the problem, is that some of these numbers are coming in so far away from any expert analysis on it that it's left a lot of folks going, okay, which way do we go from here? Because we don't even know if we're headed in the right direction, because these numbers and estimates are so far off. So as much as it is needed, and we need to make sure that we have people covered and protected and getting the health care that they need, we can't do it at to the detriment of our financial security. And I don't think that we're doing that, but in order to make sure that we continue to be fiscally responsible in taking care of these people and continuing to deploy Medicaid and expanding enrollment, it's going to take a level of analysis of enrollment, the numbers, the costs, that I don't think has been something that was anticipated, because we were relying on more outside analysis of what the costs were going to be, and that hasn't been the case at all. And so we're going to have to take that analysis kind of inside, and myself and other members of JFAC are going to have to look very closely, take it upon ourselves to just continue to monitor those numbers to see which way is up and make sure that we're making the right decisions to create the best, most positive impact for the execution of Medicaid here in Idaho.
It's going to be a long-standing problem for sure.
So this is a question, I think, a final one that I have for both of you. Obviously, we've seen politics on a state and a federal level so in the news lately, and such a key topic on wherever you go. I think it is just because it is such a visible thing, and there's just, obviously, we all have so much at stake right now. So with all of these pressing matters in our state and in the federal government, why is it so important to focus on civility right now within our government? And then I'll throw this to you, Senator Rabe, first.
They are very polarized right now, and as someone in the super majority here, sometimes I feel that that pressure. I know that both sides have their extremes. I think this year in particular, we have been put into information silos and echo chambers with others who believe the same things that we do. And this has been a really refreshing experience for me to be in a place with a bunch of people that maybe disagree with me. And I think that we just have to continue to try to build relationships with each other and friendships with each other, despite everything that's happening here in the State House. And that's something I'm committed to doing, just trying to make friends and get to know people for who they are as people, and get to understand their beliefs, which are rooted in values that do have merit. So that's where I'm coming from. I think this year is particularly maybe a hard year because of what we're coming out of. But I know Senator Riggs and I have built a friendship, and I hope that we can continue to do that with other legislators as well.
Yeah, Senator Robbie's completely right. It's the idea that disagreement on ideas and approaches to situations make somebody a bad person is this idea that's being perpetrated throughout our country that is just, it's unacceptable, and it's something that we have to work on as a people. And whether you're somebody that tends to go on the attack based on what you believe against what somebody else believes, or whether or not you're the one that's being attacked for your ideas and your beliefs, we all need to do a better job of not being so reactionary to those differing opinions, because it is spooling up in a way that is incredibly unhealthy for our country, and we're setting examples for our kids. And the way we react when people attack us, or when we feel attacked, or when our principles, our beliefs, when those things are being questioned, how we respond to it is going to echo on for years. And there's a lot of pent-up frustration about just everything that's gone on, the chaos of 2020. And people they're lashing out sometimes in ways that are not appropriate. And so to take a minute to help others to understand that we have the right to believe what we believe, to think what we think, to act in ways that promote our lives and our beliefs. It's incredibly important to recognize that just because somebody feels a different way philosophically, that doesn't put you at odds as human beings. And so if we can continue to hold on to those principles and understand that we may disagree on approaches to things, but that doesn't mean we can't still discuss it and debate it and learn from each other. It's something that's incredibly important. And it's like Senator Robbie said, even though she's in the minority here, from a political party standpoint, we have discussions about pieces of legislation, about different things that are going on. And I attempt to learn from different perspectives, because the more we do that, the better decisions we're going to be making in the long run. And so it's something that I would encourage every person to do.
You know, there's a comment from someone who I think a few of us are familiar with, Bjorn Handeen on Facebook. And his comment is, you got to look at hashtag Idaho, IDPOL, which is the political hashtag on Twitter, and just some of the nastiness that occurs out there. Having lived in that world and am glad to be out of it, what are some recommendations? I mean, the fact is media figures, myself, you all can't spend your days disciplining people on social media. But what are some recommendations that you two might have to help people think about what civility actually looks like? Because an offhanded comment is easy to see, but within the body, there's a real difference between the actual act of voting, which is the implementation of power, and the supermajority has the power. But how do you interact so that at least those ideas are integrated? And what are you doing about all of the nastiness on social media? And we'll start with you again, Senator Riggs.
Well, I think, it comes back to the same old concepts, and everybody knows it, but we get so worked up about these things that we believe so firmly in that sometimes it's easy to lose perspective. You try to make a point, You try to make something clear, but it feels like people aren't listening. And so you try to get louder. And the problem is, however you phrase it, if you call someone an idiot, they're not going to listen to you. You've already lost your ability to make a point with them. So it doesn't matter if they agree with you or not. Take the time to say something in a calm and rational manner. And if after explaining your point, if after having that discussion, that back and forth, if they're the ones that are still calling you an idiot, if they're the ones that refuse to listen to your side of things, you've done what you can. Spooling up against people who are going to act irrationally and not listen to other sides of an argument aren't people that you can necessarily do a lot to convince in the long run. And so you try to do the work that is good. You try to say, in being a public figure, you're going to get hit with a lot of things that sometimes they're fair and sometimes they're not, and you have to be willing to suffer through that for the greater good of the state and the people. And so you just continue to kind of slowly push towards setting an example of civility as opposed to trying to lecture people into civility.
Senator?
Yeah, so again, coming from the super minority, it's a very small group of folks, but I think what I try to do is just always be the most prepared person in the room. Stay very focused on data and research and fact, and ask really good questions and tell stories. Especially while I've been working on this legislation around rental fees, I have a lot of experience with that, and a lot of people I know that have been affected by exorbitant rental fees. So just explaining that from my personal perspective has been really useful, and getting to know people in a personal, human way, as Senator Riggs mentioned, as well. I think one thing we can all avoid is name calling and finger pointing and making accusations or points based on things that may or may not be true. We all need to do our research, and that's something we as legislators have a responsibility to do. So on social media, I'm not
Social
sure
media is tough.
but keep it constructive, folks. That's what I have to say.
It's so easy to just kind of be flippant on social media. I find myself there, and I'm guilty of it just as much as the next person. So there is that piece. But I wanted to ask you all a little bit about youth in politics. When I left the legislature 1 month before my 45th birthday, and I was still in basically the top 10 youngest members of the legislature. And some of the things that I personally struggled with was I would hear people say, well, when I was in elementary school, and I would do quick math, and at the time they might have been in elementary school in the 1950s, and all I could see was how the world has changed so much. What would you recommend, and how do you handle the fact that you are two of the youngest members of the Senate? And what are you doing to get other young people to run? Because that diversity of ideas is important across the board, and age is one of them. We'll start with you, Senator Rabe.
It is, and I am the second youngest woman to ever be in our legislature, and that's not something I take lightly. But I think I didn't have the confidence to run without the encouragement of the senator that preceded me, Marianne Jordan. She really encouraged me to do so. So for me, it's instilling confidence in young people, getting engaged with younger groups of folks at Boise State University, which is in my district. And also just keeping people informed on social media, where a lot of younger people are getting engaged in politics on different Facebook groups or things like that, to get people actually informed and engaged in asking questions. A lot of people, especially younger people, don't even know what our state legislature is or does. So just kind of starting there and trying to find allies and folks that are interested and engaged, and encouraging them to get more involved.
Great. Senator Riggs.
Yeah, I think what's important, and what I've always done for myself, and what I always encourage other folks to do, especially if they're younger, but older folks as well, is rely on your experience to help give you frame of reference, but never let it be something that makes a limiting factor for you. Whether it's older folks in the legislature, or young folks just getting involved with politics that have opinions about things. A lot of times they use their frame of reference, their experience, to narrowly define their approach to things going forward. And I always try to encourage everybody just to, the things that you experience are the things that you experience. They shaped who you are, but that doesn't mean there isn't a whole other world of understanding and viewpoints that are different from what you experienced. And so the more we can understand that and appreciate that about each other, the better suited young people will be to get engaged, knowing that the experiences of the past were the things that helped get us to where we are, and it for better or worse sometimes. And that doesn't mean that everything is all good or all bad from anyone's perspective. And I think that when young people can realize that there's value in not only their experiences, but the experiences of those that came before them, that experience and age doesn't necessarily equate to wisdom, and that they should get involved and learn things and ask questions and not be afraid to offer answers and solutions as well. When we have that ability to kind of encourage that in one another, then we get a more diverse perspective. We get a better understanding of new ideas that might help fix old problems. And so I just encourage that dialogue, that back and forth, that willingness to get in and ask questions and not know all the answers, but learn from it and then put it to good use in the future. I think that's something that's important for the ongoing stability of our government and our state and our country.
Well, I want to personally thank you two for being here. I know how busy it is to be in the legislature, and then I also thank your flexibility for staying for that one last vote on the House floor, and then rushing to your offices in the basement and making this happen. You know, Derrell, I want to thank you too. I mean, the Alene Chamber of Commerce kind of had no idea how this system works. We had to reschedule it. We had to reboot it and get it all going. But a good conversation, an important conversation, because we have so much more in common, both as the southern part of Idaho and the northern part of Idaho, and two valleys that are growing rapidly, than we have differences. And I just appreciate you committing to this process, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, first of all, yeah, thank you, both senators. Obviously, it shows your dedication to making sure you got your vote in, and then as well as making this call. That's great to see that your dedication as far as getting that going and making sure that the priorities for both of our districts, and seeing the importance of this in our business communities. And Matt, this was a dream come true for us up here. We've been wanting to do this. I got to go down to Boise last year before COVID and experience everything down there for the first time, and get to introduce myself to you. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, we need to do something, and bringing, like I said, both the North and the South here together, because I said that invisible line can get pretty thick sometimes. And so seeing our elected officials making that such a high priority is what makes this great. And then obviously I would not be able to do any of this without our great sponsors. Obviously, Blue Cross of Idaho, thank you so much for being our presenting sponsor. That was a great commercial. Northwest Specialty Hospital, and then the Murray Group. You know, this is what they obviously see this as being very valuable to them, being very valuable to our community. And so thank you to them for being able to put this on.
And last but not least, thank you to our media partners, the Idaho Statesman, the Idaho Press, Idaho Ed News, and the Coeur d'Alene Press. Without them, our platform would be much smaller, and our ability to actually have these conversations to a broad-based audience residing across the political spectrum would be more difficult. So we're so thankful to have you both here. Thank you, Derrell, and we will see you next time, as Derrell and I plan to have many partnerships in the future. Take care, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.